welcome back to Knit Together with Kim and Jonna. I'm Kim.
And I'm Jonna.
We want to thank you so much for your overwhelming support already so far with our new YouTube channel. We're having so much fun. And today I'm going to talk about my Orkney cardigan, which I was wearing in our first two videos. I basically wear it every single day. I saw the pattern a few years ago. I probably got interested in Marie Wallin designs because I watch Fruity Knitting all the time, and Andrea loves Marie Wallin. And so I purchased this Rowan book, which I showed in episode 1, 40 Iconic Hand Knit Designs. And I found the pattern inside, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, what's not to love? I had never done an all over Fair Isle. I was very intimidated. I thought about it for 2 years. We both ordered yarn to knit the sweater. Mm-hmm. She hasn't knit hers yet.
Which was a good thing because you needed extra yarn.
Yes, I had to use some of her yarn because I added steeks. That's a whole nother thing, which I might not even talk about. There's so much to talk about with this sweater. I'm gonna kind of do more detail, but not too much, because again, as I said, I could talk about it for about an hour. But basically, I ordered this book. The pattern is in it. This is what the charts look like. I know you can't see it.
Which might be one of the reasons I didn't knit it.
Right, it's very overwhelming. They're itty bitty, teeny tiny little black and white symbols with a symbol key. It's really intimidating and overwhelming. I started, well, I think I said, it's supposed to be knitted flat, 2 fronts, a back, and 2 sleeves. And I decided to knit it in the round so I wouldn't have to purl Fair Isle. And so what I did was I printed the charts, I taped them together, and so this is the right front, wait, is it upside down? I don't even know at this point. Yeah, this is the right front, back, and left front.
And what do all those little symbols represent?
On the chart? Mm-hmm. They represent the different colors. Yeah, so they're not colored symbols, they're right. Like symbols. I have to remember the triangle equals green or something. I don't even know. So that was a little overwhelming. I read people's blogs about the sweater for 2 years. For 2 years, I planned this out. And in the end, my husband kept saying, because I knit for everybody else, baby blankets, baby things, baby stuff, baby stuff, baby stuff for my daughters, hats for my son and my husband, and he just said, you have to knit something for yourself. And we're gonna insert pictures of how many sweaters we've knit. I've knit now, my Orkney was number 6, a garment for myself, and Jonna has knitted
11.
11-ish.
You know, some I've knit more than once, but I only ended up with 1 sweater, which is a whole other
Today,
story.
we're not going to talk about what we're wearing, but we're both wearing garments knitted by Jonna. She knitted this for me on my birthday. But I'll insert pictures of our piles of sweaters. And I've been knitting for 30 years and only 6 garments. Well, now I have 7 because I finished one that I'll talk about in episode 2. And Jonna has 11, but she's switched to socks. So she knits a lot of socks.
I do.
Anyway, off track. So I thought about it for a couple of years, and then I just decided this summer on vacation to just go for it. So I did. As far as planning goes, let me talk about planning first. As I said, I taped these together. I looked at each motif and I wrote down here how many stitch repeat it is. I actually contacted Marie Wallin about this project and told her I wanted to knit it in the round, and she did give me a warning. She emailed me right back and she told me, just so you know, you can't just start with the right front and start knitting and go all the way around, because the motifs are supposed to match in the front and be centered on the back. And because it's sewn together, in her design, when you sew it together, the motifs don't necessarily match up on the side seam, but who cares? It's under your arm, right? Mm-hmm. But if you look, it's so beautiful how if you line it up, everything lines up perfectly. Like if you buttoned it, all the motifs are just perfect in front. So as I said, I taped them all together. I indicated the stitch repeats. I decided to take out the 2 extra stitches on each section for the side seam, and I then inserted 1 stitch, which is my faux seam. I put in a faux seam so that when the motifs don't match up, it looks like a seam. So I just did a column of purls. That's my faux seam. I'm going to insert a lot of pictures because it's impossible to show you close up in the video. As I'm talking, I'll just insert pictures. So yeah, so these 2 stitches were eliminated and I just added a purl column for faux seams and calculated how many stitches that would be. And I also had to guess ahead of time how many buttonholes I wanted and where they would be, because normally you knit the left side that doesn't have buttonholes and you lay out your buttons, and then you knit the right side where you want the buttons. But I wanted to knit it in the round. You can't do that. So based on my gauge from my swatch and also just her gauge, I guessed how many buttons I would have, and it's not perfect. If you look at the top, the 2 top buttons are really close together, and then the rest are evenly spaced. And in the end, who cares? Nobody has ever seen me wear this and say, oh no, those 2 top buttons are too close together. And I usually don't button it anyway. But so those are just things that I had to plan and calculate. I did swatch. I forgot to bring my swatches today. My very first swatch was 2 years ago. And I swatched with... I started swatching, we'll talk about in another video about swatching, but I've started swatching not just for gauge, but also for skills or techniques that are in that garment. So for this, when I did my swatch, I did the ribbing. I swatched in the round with a steek, and I even did some buttonholes in my swatch so that I would kind of know what it's going to look like, how to do it. And then when I cut my steek, I was looking at my beautiful steek, and I decided I would use my steek as my facings, because in this sweater you're supposed to just knit with the normal raw edge in the front and then knit a separate facing in rib and then sew that on. And I was thinking, I don't want to sew on a button band facing. So I literally made my steek my facing. I just folded it back. And I had to plan out and make sure I had matching buttonholes, because the button obviously has to go through the facing and the sweater. So I just planned it all out. I planned it all out, and it honestly went way better than I thought.
You're a planner.
I am a planner.
I'm a jump in blindfolded person.
And that's so fun. And what's great about our friendship, I keep talking about our friendship. It's been a lifesaver before COVID and during COVID. But we balance each other out. We value each other's strengths and completely overlook each other's weaknesses. Completely. So anyway, I casted this darn thing on. I cast it on in the middle. I started, well, it doesn't really matter till you join it, but in the middle of the steek was where I had my beginning of row or end of row marker. So altogether I had 6 center steek stitches, and then I decided, the reason I did 6 and not 5 is because I wanted to change yarns in the middle, and I wanted each side of the change to be the same color yarn, just because it's in the middle. So I did 6 steek stitches and then 7 facing stitches, and then I started with the right front and went around. For the ribbing, I did not include the faux seam, because you don't need a faux seam in ribbing. So I just did the ribbing all the way around, and then the same thing on the left front, the 7 facing stitches and the other 3 steek stitches. And I joined, and I just started knitting. I did the ribbing. When I was calculating the ribbing, how many stitches, it has to be a multiple of 4 plus 2, because it's a 2 by 2 rib. So I wanted obviously it to begin and end. She probably had that on hers too, but it begins with the beige and it ends with the beige. So there's 2,
Now, is that called corrugated ribbing?
I don't even know.
Okay.
You can look it up.
Yeah.
And I'll add it.
I think it is. It looks like it is.
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
It's basically 2 knits and two pearls, but it's in different colors, right?
Okay.
The knits are in beige and the pearls are in the bluish color. So I did that, and then at the end of that, I had to figure out how many stitches I needed for the body, the color work. To work out, I needed to add 1 stitch in the center back, which I just did in my last row of ribbing. I just made one somewhere. I don't even know. I did it in the center back. And then I had the right amount of stitches, including my faux seams. So however many stitches that was. You can get the pattern and figure it out. And then I just started doing stranded color work. Just so you know, I knit continental style, and I do my 2 colors in my left hand. I don't throw anything. I just pick from the color that I need. The 3 color sections were really hard, and I didn't want to throw the 3rd color, so I don't know if I invented it, but then I held the 2 contrast colors further back on my finger and the main color on the front, and then I just picked from which contrast color I was going to use. But I did it. I really, really, really can't believe I did it. If I can do it, any of you can do it. It really was really, really fun. But how did I read these charts? That's the question. Mm-hmm. I have a knitting planner, and inside my knitting planner, I write down all my notes of what I'm knitting and what I did and what I didn't do. And I realized the pages are graph paper. Mm. So what I did was, each motif I had written down already how many stitch repeat and how many row repeat it was. So in my knitting planner, I'm going to insert pictures. I bought this beautiful set of colored pencils. And so before I started each motif, I looked at the chart, which was a nightmare, but I looked at about a repeat and a half, and I charted it with colored pencils in my knitting planner, and it was a lifesaver. Mm-hmm. And I had to indicate when the right front started, when the right front ended, when the center started, the back, and when the back ended, and when the left front side seam started and then ended. Some of the motifs, it was the same all the way around. Like if obviously a 2-stitch repeat or a 6-stitch repeat, I think it was the same. But when it was a 10-stitch repeat, it was completely different. And sometimes I messed it up and I would have to go back and unknit it and redo it. But I could always check by this chart and see when I got to the end of that section, whether it's the right front or the back, oh, I have the right color. I ended on the right color. I indicated those on my chart. So I knew in that little 1.5 repeats, I knew where in the repeat each of those sections was supposed to end.
And it was particularly difficult because the Rowan felted tweed is numbered by color.
Yes.
And the color names are not on the labels. And the color names don't always reflect the color.
No.
So
like mineral was yellow or something like that, right?
Which made it really tricky.
Right. So what I did, I had a little key. Again, I don't know if it's in one of my pictures. I can take a new picture, but I had a key with the symbol, the color name, and then my colored pencil color. Mm-hmm. And then I would just keep referring to that. But it helped so much to have my little hand-drawn charts. So it was like art therapy in the middle of doing the sweater. I kind of enjoyed those little breaks between segments, motifs, and I could just color my little chart and have it make sense in my brain, and then I would start knitting it. It really worked out really, really well. Oh, by the way, weaving in ends is always an issue, people think, with stranded color work. And yes, if you're knitting flat, yes. But because I steeked it, I just changed the colors in the steek. So I just left them hanging there, and then when I cut the steek, they just fell off. So I really had hardly any ends to weave in. Wow. It was lovely. It was beautiful. What else did I want to talk about? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, but it was a lot. So then I finished, so I knitted up to the underarms, and so far I just had my center steek, and then in one row I bound off my underarm shelf, and then in the next row, I casted on steek stitches for the armholes. I mean, I steeked everything. And then when I got to the front center, same thing. I cast it off for the front center. There's always that little flat part. And then in the next round, I bound off, and then I casted on steek stitches for the front center. So I had steek, 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 steek on the arms, but it worked great. Then this pattern, for this complicated sweater, the pattern is a front and back of a page, because as Jonna would say, they don't hold your hand.
No.
When it said decrease here, it doesn't tell you how to decrease. It doesn't tell you what technique. It doesn't tell you anything. I decided, then do I want them visible or do I want them invisible? I just decided to do leaning toward the center, and it looks fine. One of them, talk about mistakes, I leaned one the wrong way. I didn't change it. Nobody's going to notice. Nobody has ever said that one decrease is leaning the wrong way. You've probably not even noticed. No. It's a hand knit, and I love it. I love it with all its mistakes. So yeah, I just kept knitting all the way up, and when it got to the shoulder, little tiny, like 3 rows of a little bit of a slant binding off, Then I had to go back and forth a little bit, but it was like 3 rows, so I was fine. And then I finished the body. I think then I sewed the shoulders together just because I like to do things ahead of time. I wanted to try it on, and it fit beautifully. And then I started the sleeves, and the sleeves I did at the same time. I think I mentioned this in our first episode.
No sleeve island.
No sleeve island. No, it was a sleeve continent.
Right.
No.
It's a lot of sleeve.
So I just did them both together with steek between. So steek, sleeve, and just went all the way up. And this was really important for me. I wanted to talk about stitch markers. I use a lot of stitch markers so I don't forget things, because one of the way to eliminate mistakes is not to just go on knitting and forget to do the buttonhole, right?
Exactly.
On my little colored charts, I indicated increases and decreases. I indicated buttonholes. I indicated everything so that when I got to that point, I didn't have to remember, is this the 11th row for my buttonhole?
Did you really have to knit this in peace and quiet with no distractions?
Not once I got a routine going. No, it was pretty, because I indicate everything on my chart, my hand-drawn chart. I could mindlessly knit and just follow my chart.
Wow.
But on this, I was so happy I had a stitch marker for my center of my sleeve, because later when you get to the end of this whole pattern chart, you have to repeat it, but it's not this narrow, it's this wide. So I had to figure out from the center how far the chart went and where it started. I know it's a lot, but if you don't care about the Orkney cardigan, then you don't have to watch any more of this video. But if you love this kind of thing, it was really cool. It was really fun to figure it out. It was such an accomplishment. I feel like so much of a better knitter because I did this.
Mm-hmm. How did you manage your yarn?
I didn't really have to because of the way I hold it. I did not.
She pulls from the center. I pull from the outside.
Oh, you mean the yarn balls?
Yes, and just keeping things neat and tidy. Did you have them in separate bowls?
No, they're all in my bag, all rumbling around with each other.
Oh, okay.
That's not true.
Tangling?
I think the 2 colors I was using, I would put them in my knitting bowl. But they don't get tangled because I pull from the center of the, what kind of,
which I'm doing now and have a little yarn barf, but
that's fine.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. But when I pull from the outside, then the ball is constantly turning and twirling in the bag, and then it gets tangled easily. Anyway, I was gonna say for stitch markers on this part, I had a stitch marker on either side of my steek, and then I had a stitch marker for the facing buttonhole, a stitch marker for between the facing and the actual front of the sweater, a stitch marker for the other buttonhole, the actual buttonhole, and then I had a stitch marker for my faux seam, a stitch marker for my center back. What was good about it, again, is I didn't get too far if I made a color work mistake, because when I got to that marker,
you knew which color you should.
I knew which color I should have, so that really helped a lot with avoiding mistakes.
Did you do any tinking?
A little bit. Mostly maybe because I misread my chart. I mean, it is what it is. Oh, and there were mistakes in the sleeve chart too. There were 2 obvious for me. The motifs are actually all the same, but different colors. So by then I knew them very well. And I noticed one of these, you can see it here, not that it matters. See it circle? It should be, it's like, I call them teeth. I could see that one was missing, and then something else. So I fixed it in my sweater.
And it always makes me nervous to knit from a book, because books aren't updated the way the PDFs are updated on Ravelry, which is nice. You go in and you get an email notification that your pattern's been updated, and then it's.
But what's interesting is I actually got updated charts from Rowan. I emailed them, and I think these are the updated charts, and they still had mistakes in them. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I fixed it. I figured it out. So if you're gonna knit this, contact me, and I'll let you know. So what else did I do? The front is supposed to be, normally you would knit the back first, and it's 26 rows longer than the front. So again, I just guessed ahead of time how long I wanted it based on my gauge, based on what I had already been knitting. And then I guessed how long I wanted the back to be. And then I just made the front 26 rows shorter than that. And it turned out perfectly.
Wow.
Because even if you do a gauge swatch, and Andrea says this all the time, I always talk about, like we're friends. Right?
I don't know, we think of our YouTube channel We talk about Art and Carlos, and we're just going to pop in for dinner one of these days.
Yeah.
You know?
Andrea is Andrea from Fruity Knitting.
They don't know us, but we think we know them.
So funny. But Andrea from Fruity Knitting, she checks her gauge while she's knitting. So by the time I get up to where I need to figure out the front and back height, I've already have all this knitting that I can measure. So that made that easy. So then I cut my steeks because I wanted to try it on. And I do have a video of that. When I did the sweater, I actually videotaped myself explaining the steeks and cutting the steeks. So I will insert that here. And I think I talk in those videos. So I might insert them with my talking from then. So I might sound different. Who knows? So I'll put that in here. If you're wondering what a steek is, it's a little bridge of stitches between two parts so that you can knit in the round and always knit and never purl. So I'm going to cut up here and then fold these back. Those will be the facings. I also put steeks where the sleeves would be. So this is an armhole. So I'll cut here and then I'll have an armhole. And then I also put a steek in the front. This will be the front center and the neckline. And so I'm gonna cut here. And just so you know, I also started the sleeves and I'm doing both at the same time. So there's a sleeve, a steek, a sleeve, and a steek. And when I'm done, I'll just cut the sleeves apart. So next video will be me cutting the steek. Yep. Okay, first I'm gonna cut the center neckline steek between these stitches. Cut, cut, cut. Oh, this is so weird. Cutting my knitting. Oh, I did it. Next. Oh, look how much better that looks. Wow. Next, I'm gonna cut up the center. Here we go. There. Next I'll cut the sleeves and then I'll try it on. Yay! Okay, so then I knitted my sleeves, and when I got to the sleeve cap, so it's a set-in sleeve, so it's not just straight. I have a sleeve cap to do. I did a steek, yes, I did a steek for that as well. Just like underarm, I bound off for the underarm shelf, and then I did a steek for the sleeve cap. So even though I was doing all those decreases, I still had a steek. So I had double steeks in those as well. But it made it so much easier. And then I cut my sleeve steeks. I sewed my sleeves in, which wasn't easy, I have to say, because normally when you do this, you would not have done your side seams yet. You would not have sewn them together. You would do shoulders and then set in your sleeves, and then do the underarm and the side seam as one continuous thing. But it was a specific size hole, and I had to fit it in there. So that was a little freaky, but I did it. I remembered from way back, I used to sew Barbie clothes with my mom. And when my kids were little, I would sew pajamas for them and everything. And I remember like easing in the sleeve into the hole. So I used,
and with knit fabric, it's easy.
and knit fabric, it's more, you know, flexible, so it was much easier. Then I sewed my sleeves in, I finished all that, and then I did my neck rib, piece of cake. Oh, but I did notice in the pattern, at the end of the neck rib at the top, she had one less row of beige, and I did that, and I looked at it and I thought, it just doesn't look right. Sorry, Marie. I changed that. So I just added one more row of the beige, and then I bound off, and that was it just looks better to me. I folded back my facing. Oh, one thing I was wondering about is now I have 2 layers for my buttonhole. So I figured out a way to stitch together the top and the bottom of the buttonhole so that they're stuck together. And then I'll take a picture of this. I don't have one yet. I just folded my steek back. Well, it was really my facing, but it looks exactly like my steek. And at first I did not reinforce my steeks before I cut them because it's sticky wool, you don't have to. But Jonna had told me about the crochet reinforcement. And then I also learned exactly how to do it from a virtual knit live I did in October or September. And I loved how the crochet reinforcement turns the fabric back. And I realized that would be a beautiful edge, that turned back edge then to whip stitch my facing down.
It looks so finished.
It's gorgeous. The inside is just as gorgeous as the outside. I'm so happy with it. Really, really.
So you know, real knitter, you walk around and flash people the inside of your sweater.
Yes, I knit this. See? Show the inside. And I think that's it. Again, I didn't really have to weave in many ends. And I found these beautiful buttons, which I mentioned before, these brass buttons. At first I thought I might want to do more of a traditional, kind of like a pewter with maybe a design on it. But I found these beautiful brass buttons. Oh, I asked recently in an Instagram post, do you sew your buttons on with yarn or thread?
Both.
You do? You do not. Since when?
The pink cardigan has, well, for my thread I used a strand of mohair.
So did you tell me that, or did I just figure it out?
No, you just figured it out. Yeah.
So I was sewing these buttons on. Again, I haven't made that many garments for myself.
Because the yarn is not sturdy enough.
Right.
And so the yarn, and then the thread alone just doesn't look right.
Yeah. I like it to match the sweater. So I tried just using the Rowan felted tweed to sew the button on, but as soon as I pulled it, you don't want to do a million of them, a million layers because it's too thick. I just wanted to do one crisscross. But as soon as I pulled it to try to pull it tight, it just pulled apart. And so I thought, let me get matching thread. So in the needle, I had a piece of yarn and a piece of thread. See how similar we are?
Well, and the reason I know that is because oftentimes socks will come with a heel reinforcing thread. So you actually knit the heel flap using the yarn and the thread to reinforce the heel.
And I thought I was making it up. That's why I asked that in the Instagram post.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I like the look of the matching yarn sewing, if it's possible. If it's a super bulky, it's not going to be possible. But if it will fit in the needle and fit through the buttonhole, the holes of the button, then I like that. So anyway, I wonder how long I talked about this. Hopefully it wasn't an hour. But I absolutely love this sweater. Unless I knit a sweater every month, I will be wearing this repeatedly in many, many, many of our videos. But thank you for watching. And if you have any other more detailed questions, go ahead and ask me. We will have show notes for this, but it won't be that many because it's just one sweater. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks. Bye.